Thank you for your patience. We're stalling. Thank you for your patience. We're stalling for a few minutes until our last board member gets here. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Even though I don't have my agenda in front of me. Thank you. Can we have we're going to do the flag salute.
It's still at the high school. Perfect.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now the report out from closed session.
On item B5, the board, it was moved and seconded to revoke an interdistrict transfer agreement of a student. The vote was roll call 6-0. And same item B5, another motion and second to revoke the interdistrict transfer agreement for a student. That vote was roll call 6-0 as well. On item B7, the board approved a certificated leave of absence request for the 18-19 school year. That vote was roll call 6-0. On item B8, the board approved a classified leave request for the July 1st to August 31st. It was a roll call vote 6-0.
Thank you. Do we have any changes to the agenda? Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do we have any public comments?
Yes.
The superintendent does.
I have a public comment. Could Chief Dewey please come up? Chief Dewey. Come right here next to me. I just wanted to honor Chief Dewey on behalf of the Board of Trustees and our school district. My partner in crime, Chief Dewey, is retiring. And so he has done so much for us in the past 6 years that I have been here. And I cannot thank you enough for everything that you've done to keep our kids safe, our staff safe, everything that you've done to support literacy of kids in this community. And because you and I go and read in schools together, and you'll have to come again next year
I will.
for Read Across America Day, we got him a Dr. Seuss book, Oh, the Places You'll Go. And again, Chief Dewey, I can't thank you enough for everything that you've done for us and our kids. And, you know, we've had a lot of interesting situations over the last few years, and you and the police department have been there with us 100%. So thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks. Can I talk?
Yes,
Can I say
sure.
that? You know, I was driving here tonight and I was thinking is that my kids, both of my boys started at Ukiah, and they were completely educated by the Ukiah Unified School District, and one has his bachelor's degree and he's in law enforcement, and my other son has a master's degree now and is a teacher for you. And I couldn't be prouder to be part of this community, and to raise my kids here, and to have all of you that are so committed to every kid in our that is here is just really incredible, and I thank you all very, very much. Being able to work with Deb and Jason has just been an incredible experience, and every single day to get a text out of the blue and suddenly be rushing around to solve a problem, and to know that that we compare notes on press releases, and we solve problems together, and we're a team is just really incredible. And most of all, I want to thank Deb and Jason for the work they do, and just once again, I want to thank the teachers and the board and everybody. Like I said before, is that I could not have picked a better place to raise a family and to have my kids, and to have two kids that play baseball and football and would never, hardly ever pick up a book to get where they got. And it really is an incredible, absolutely incredible that the teachers that had an impact in their lives, and all of you and everything that's done. And I thank you all very, very much.
Thank you.
So.
When Chief Dewey called me, I literally almost cried. So anyway, thank you so much, Chief.
Now we're going to test his true commitment to the community to see if he makes it through the whole board meeting.
No. I told him he could leave, Tyler.
He's given enough.
Thank you. Do we have a UTA report?
Can we give Terry that mic, please?
Good evening, Board. Good evening, Superintendent. And I just wanted to say that for the majority of teachers who just finished 2 days of training for our new ELA adoption, yes, it was a bumpy road to start, and I thank administration for everything that they did to help smooth that out. And I think that teachers are really excited to implement the new English language arts, and the trainings are going really well. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Milani.
Good evening. Just a little side note for Mr. Dewey. I had Jonathan in 5th grade, and my daughter had him his first year at Pomalita. And I remember walking in and I said, "Jonathan, is that you?" And he said, "Oh my gosh, Miss Milani, is that your daughter? I'm so nervous now." And I thought, he's got this big scruffy beard, but he's always been such a good boy. And so they're just wonderful people. So I just had to just say I'd say he's a good boy, but he's a good grown guy, I guess you could say now. So anyway. So I've got 3 things I'm going to talk about: leadership, academic programs, and positive culture. So the first one is, I know you all know what we're doing for leadership is, oh, thank you. There we go. It is review and revision of this last year going into the new year. So what we've been working on is we're going to be going over our site implementation plans again tomorrow. We continually review them, but now we're going to kind of take a look back at our year and say what is and what isn't working at our site and fix that. We have been looking at educational benefits forms, so we're really looking at how are we going to continue with having parents fill out the free and reduced forms, even though they are all going to be receiving free and reduced lunch. So that is a real quandary for us to try and say, you know, even though you get this, how are we going to continue with that and have them fill out the forms? So we've been working on that and coming up with different strategies. We are looking at parent engagement. How are we getting parents involved to stay involved, especially with chronic absenteeism? I have a huge issue in kindergarten with chronic absenteeism. I have like a 25% of my case are chronically absent. And so we are going to do a little something different when we do our kindergarten orientation. We are going to do workstations. So, and one of them is going to be about your child having to be at school in kindergarten, because what I get a lot of is, well, it's not, they don't have to go to school, so why do we really have to bring them? It's not, you know, we could say that we don't want them to go to kindergarten at all. So we've been making phone calls and doing things like that, but it hasn't made a real impact. So we are trying, we're gonna just try a few things next year to see what we can do. Leadership network, we are looking at, well, we can take that one in professional development. What are we going to do next year in our leadership network? How are we going to just make sure that our leaders are still leading and that they are working on the literacy, the benchmark, the mathematics? How are we going to roll all that together and make sure we're still doing those things? We've been looking specifically at PBIS, elementary literacy, and gender spectrum. And then we are looking at our single plan for student achievement and going over that and revising that again too. So that's what we've been doing in leadership. Academic programs. So I sat for a long time to do these 3 slides. It was hard for some reason. And I think the reason is I think you know the programs that we work with. So on one side, what I did was we are always looking at collaborative conversations. In ELA, we are looking at adopting a new curriculum benchmark. We're looking at close reads. And for Ukiah, we are specifically looking at fluency in mathematics and fluency in literacy. So we're still looking at bridges with problem solving. And what we're seeing a dip in is computational fluency in mathematics. And then for Ukiah specifically, I have a group of teachers who are going to be looking at lesson study as a way of collaborating and working together in mathematics. On the other side, I thought, here are the skills that here are some of the skills that we want our kids to have when they're working in those programs. We want students' curiosity for learning to be developed. We want them to develop writing and speaking skills. We want them to build greater pride and achievement. We want to promote logical thinking and problem solving. We want to heighten their motivation, and we want to encourage cooperative learning. So those are kind of what we want them to be able to do inside of our programs. Positive culture. So one of my favorite things. So how to, and then programs. You know that I am a big proponent of character counts. It runs through everything I do. We do love and logic, how to fill buckets, and we're going to bring Rachel's challenge back this year. PTA is going to help me bring Rachel's challenge back this year into the school, and hopefully get a larger audience in the evening with community members. And we are looking at, like with Grace Hudson, state recognition for our PBIS program. How do we do that? Well, the first thing we have to do whenever we work with children is build relationships. That's one of the key components of how are you going to get students to move. They have to think that somebody loves them and wants to take care of them. So everybody on my campus needs to make sure that they're attached to children, so those children feel attached. A side note, so attached that I have Ben DeLong and Irene DeLong, who are, one is a computer technician, and the other one is a 6th grade teacher. They are now adopting one of the 4th grade students there at school. So it's been quite interesting and lovely to watch. And so I kind of look at that and say, we build community, we build family. It's important to us. And so it just, every day she'll text me a picture or she'll send me, she's like, look at what Michael's doing. They're just happy. It's amazing. So we want to teach essential social skills. So not only do we want academic, but how do you behave? How do you apologize to somebody? How do you use your words and your voice to stand up for yourself before you go and tell somebody? So you have to be able to take care of you, because in the end, you are going to be the person that takes care of yourself. We want to get on the same page. So is everybody in the school on the same page when it comes to positive culture, what we're doing with students? We want to be good role models. So how we act on campus, it should be exactly how we expect our children to act on campus. So to be good role models is an important piece. We want to clarify classroom rules and make sure that students know exactly what they're doing all the time. And if you look around my campus, you'll see terrific signs everywhere you go. They know exactly what we want them to do. We teach all students problem solving, so not only inside the classroom when you're talking academics, but outside the classroom as well. So how do you problem solve when somebody's not doing something nice? And that kind of goes along with, we ask them to fill buckets. How do you put your lid on your bucket so people can't, people are always going to be mean. But how do you use your bucket to make sure, and your lid to make sure that you kind of are able to take that and walk away from it, and you don't take it all the time to make yourself feel bad. We set appropriate consequences. So the consequences should often look like whatever the issue was. I can tell you that kids who are throwing litter pick up litter. Kids who have destroyed the bathroom, we clean the bathroom. So we do a lot of things together. We use mops together and all kinds of things. And then we want to make sure that we praise students for good choices. So we are always making sure that if you've made a good choice, we let you know it. And so those are our things that we do here at Ukiah Unified and at Ukiah. Oh, is it? Oh, so it was funny. We had Terry kept telling me that we had this grandmother who had worked at Ukiah forever, and that the garden was being dedicated to her because she wanted to give money and be able to come sit in the garden with the kids. And she's like, you should know her. I said, I have no idea who this woman is. And kindergarten teacher walks by. She's like, Grandma Lou's in the garden. I said, Grandma Lou's in the garden? They're like, yes, that's who's dedicated the garden to. I said, that's all they had to say was Grandma Lou. I knew Grandma Lou forever. Didn't know the lady that her name is, I don't even, Luis or Rodriguez. I was like, I don't know who that is. It was funny. So, but I know Grandma Lou. So anyway, so that's another positive thing that we're doing at school too. So that was a nice dedication to her. So any questions?
Can I send my 14-year-old to learn how to apologize?
She can come with mine.
Yeah. Thank you, Dana.
You're welcome.
Item C8, acceptance of donations. I can't remember. Are we reading these still?
Normally you just read the person and the topic, not the amounts and the dates and all that.
Thank you.
But we change it every board meeting.
Okay. Gloria and John Keys to the STEM Club Sea Perch program. Don and Linda Kersey to the STEM Sea Club Perch program. Matt McKeon donated a car, thank you, Matt, to the Ukiah High School Auto Shop. Mendocino College Ag Department donated some plants. Dripworks donated to the irrigation system for Ukiah Elementary School. I'm assuming that is for the garden program. And Friedman Brothers donated some potting soil. So thank you to our community for supporting Ukiah Unified programs.
I'd like to make a a motion to accept those donations with gratitude.
I second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. So we're moving to item D1, strategic plan, action plan, update, and input.
Yes, so at our last board meeting, we spent a lot of time talking about the prioritization and recommendations, and the board took action and direction to let us know what to put in tonight's draft number 2. So all of the items that the board took action on are in there. The 2 items we were down to discussing for this meeting, one was allocating some funds to release teachers to have data discussions. We were able to fund that out of categorical funds, so we found an alternative funding source for that. And then the other piece was to fund a school resource officer for schools that are outside of the jurisdiction of Ukiah Police Department, which would be Eagle Peak, Calpella, and Grace Hudson. So we did speak with the Sheriff's Department, and I've got Jason here to answer any questions that you might have. They are very interested in partnering with us. However, at this time, they don't have the personnel to do this. And so what we'd like to do is set that money aside in the plan, and at a time period in the future when when the staffing level is higher, that we might be able to implement that. So that's what we're recommending, that it go in the plan, with the hope that we'll be able to fund it. So we put the additional funding earmarked in the plan for that. But it's up to the board's discussion. Jason, did you have anything to add, or does anybody have any questions?
Even if we vote to do that tonight, we would be able to change that at some time in the future if our budget dictated it.
You could possibly do that, yes, as long as we hadn't gotten too far down the road with the Sheriff's Department. But we could bring something back when, at a time in the future when that is a possibility,
Okay.
so.
I'm wondering if there's a report after the first year of having a resource officer at Colmolita, because I know it's kind of, the high school's kind of a different world. Developmentally and size-wise, they're just different people. But if this is specifically for a middle school and 2 elementary schools, I'd be more interested in seeing what have we learned from the person who's placed at Colmolita.
Yes,
Or
and
if that doesn't need to be tonight, you can send it in writing later. I don't know.
Yeah, I think Jason could share some information with the board on that.
So the piece that we've seen is that we have seen, in fact, I was just going through the data and getting some back from the police department. So we've made 138 home visits that's specific to attendance with Isabel's position. She's also made roughly another 107 with SARB notice visits as well, going out to those homes as well. I was going through the data.
138 is separate from 107?
Yeah, because we have 2 things. One, where she's going out directly to the home, and that's when she actually makes contact. I mean, oftentimes you might make 5 home visits and someone's there, actually 1 of the 5 times, where she's making contact with those. I also have a list of all the analytics, total number of calls and things that she'd gotten with those things. She also is going and constantly making presentations, whether it be on gang or drugs, around the district as well. And going out, like, for example, at Eagle Peak doing the ZAP program, we have 2 officers out there meeting with at-risk kids, things like that happening. We also saw the chronic absenteeism rate, for example. I think one of the concerns Mr. Stern has is it's roughly 3.5% difference between Eagle Peak and Palmolita with the chronic absenteeism, with having Isabel there, and the total number of times she's been called out. And number of calls. I could even submit this to the board if they'd like to see, because this is something we just got new from the analytics department there at the police department on the number of calls.
Yeah, we
she's
can
taken
put
from
something in
each side.
TGIF, but its total is 720 contacts with students and families over the course of the year.
Okay. I guess I'm more concerned about the outcomes than the number of contacts. So you're saying that the Homelita attendance improved and the Eagle Peak attendance decreased?
So what we have, for example, this year with our chronic absenteeism, Eagle Peak is at 14.7% and Palm is at 11.4. Because we're right at the very, very end of the year, we're just getting data right now. I mean, it literally was getting emails today because obviously they're going through the data right now for end of the year. So we don't have a total preparation yet for everything, but this is preliminary what it looks like so far.
And
So-
I guess, yeah, I see that now on one of the sheets that's coming up, and I guess it's hard to see off of there because that doesn't show a trend analysis over time.
You're right, it does.
So it's hard to.
Yeah, no, I agree. And we can certainly put more stuff together with those pieces as well.
Well, it's just that it's such an expensive investment,
Right,
and not that I think sheriff deputies
Right.
are overpaid. It's
Right.
just that they come with a hefty package.
Right.
And so we just have to make sure that that's the right investment.
right. I think also, and I don't know if it was put in there, the idea would be like a half-time officer that we'd be putting in. It would not be a full-time, given the sheer number of students. It's not a high school. I think some of those concerns you had as well about total cost. I think there were some concerns raised by the principals about things like response rate and concerns over safety and a bit of lack of equity, so to speak, in regards to if you're in town school and the response time of those things as well.
And Jason, I would add that it's not just from principals, it came
Right.
from parents in those communities, it came through the DAC discussion. So, anyway.
And I know some that you've been in a lot more of those discussions than I have, certainly.
How often is there a response time, other than at the high school? Is there a response time issue?
So I would have to ask Dan and Tina. I know you were there the last time. I know when it came up, I apologize. I actually was at the CASQA conference when it came up, and you guys had the full discussion, so you may know a little more than I do about some of the response issues that were coming up. I think that,
Fortunately, we don't have a lot of law enforcement emergencies
Right.
in our schools.
right,
But, so I don't know if people just maybe after a school shooting, maybe they were just thinking, well, that would be,
Right.
it would take them forever to get here.
right. I think there was both and feel free, because I think you were here in the discussion, I wasn't. I think there was a general concern about response time versus what the response time would be here.
In town,
In
right.
town. And how quickly, obviously, having SROs, the response time is always very, very quick. If there's an issue or a parent that is, out of control or whatever the piece may be with a student, that the response time certainly is much better.
Well, we never had them for 50 years. We never had them. So, I mean, I do agree that our society is becoming a bit more violent, but I guess I would want to know how many incidents did we have this
Sure.
past couple of years
Sure.
where we needed that quick response time?
Sure.
Thank you.
And
Megan,
I'll just add one thing. In the student and parent focus groups that we did that we did in March and April, the students reported, not the students at Eagle Peak, obviously, but the students at Pomalita and South Valley and the high school reported an appreciation for having law enforcement on campus, both the presence and then also the relationship that those officers are developing with the students. They feel much more comfortable reporting things to them because they know them. So it was just something that came up from our students that helped them feel safer on campus, and parents also brought it up.
Megan?
In terms of the question on the table right now, I'm not supportive of setting aside this money specifically for the sheriff deputy idea. It feels like they don't have the staff to support it. We're still kind of fussing around what exactly outcomes are we hoping from that sheriff position. And so I'm comfortable with setting aside that money to support school safety and actually, I'm not even gonna say school safety, something in those schools, because from a parity issue, I recognize that these other schools in town have a different level of support for something than the schools do outside of the area. So I would be supportive of setting aside that money, but I am not comfortable personally, but I don't, you all may feel differently, tying it to sheriff's deputies. I think that we need to be really clear about the outcomes that are associated with the expenditures we're making. I'm hearing over and over and over again that having the school resource officers are very valuable. I don't doubt that. but we're not seeing a change in our attendance rates. So I would rather us tie the value of them to an actual metric that we are seeing, that we are valuing, than continually trying to say that they're going to improve attendance rates if that's not going to be what they do. It's okay, we need to find other ways to improve attendance rates, but our data is not showing that that particular effort is resulting in better attendance or a reduction in chronic absenteeism. So I would be interested, and it may not be a discussion for right now, for tying that kind of service to an outcome that we actually are seeing and recognize and you all really want to keep. So.
Megan, I'd like to respond to your comment, and you can set your pen down if you'd like. Gosh, this powerful position has me crazy today.
You gotta stay awake.
I appreciate the second half of your comments, and it is going to be interesting to see how how we continue to use law enforcement in the schools, and how we judge that. I think that's a really valid point. I don't think that your parity idea of having that money put in the pot for those schools because of a different amount of money is being used is necessarily a good idea. And specifically, I'd like to point out, recently we did a tremendous amount of support for the STEM program at Eagle Peak. And all of our schools are different, and they all have different needs. And of course, we don't want to neglect one. But we had this new idea that said, hey, let's invest in Eagle Peak, and we didn't put $250,000 anywhere else. So I appreciate the second part of your comments, but the first part I don't think is a real solid idea.
Can someone remind me of how much money we were talking about specifically for this one? It wasn't an enormous amount.
It's 45,000.
Okay.
No, in the plan, it's
the addition.
109 or 8.
For the sheriff's deputy, the part-time sheriff's deputy? It was 112?
It's, we took the remainder of what we had and put it toward that, knowing that we don't have a specific proposal yet, but we'd like to set the money aside for that purpose. It's a little over $100,000.
Gail?
Didn't want to respond to that. I just wanted to thank you for finding some way to fund the data discussion issue. That was an issue brought up by teachers at DAC in various places that I've met, who really focus on the fact that it doesn't do us a whole lot of good to do a lot of testing if we aren't sure of how to interpret results and change curriculum. So, thank you.
It sounds like we're having mixed reviews on whether to set money aside to support law enforcement in Redwood Valley.
Not just Redwood Valley.
Rebbe Cal Pellet and Grace Hudson.
Yeah.
Thank you. Carolyn?
Well, I'd just like to throw my 2 cents in again. I just think the safety of our kids is so important, and whether it changes the absentee rate, I mean, I think that's important, but that's not the most important to me. The most important is that we have a quick response time in case there is something that happens, and we've been fortunate enough that we haven't had horrible incidences, but it only takes one. And I know from being out in the valley for several years that the response time is low. And it's just a critical issue to me.
B?
Yeah, I agree with Carolyn. I think it's really important that we think about the response the kids have to have someone on campus like that. It does make them feel more comfortable. Right now, we're concerned with kids feeling comfortable going to school and the safety of it. And I would like to put that money aside when the time comes. If it doesn't seem like a good idea, then maybe we can make that shift. But I think it really should be there for that need. And I do think it's important for, absenteeism, but I don't look at it as the most important thing. comfort that it brings the kids and the parents, which is a lot of concern, especially right now in those areas. Well, not so much in Grace Hudson, but that's a long way for them going. There's a lot of, two schools and the other one. I think it's important.
Ann?
I'm fine either way, setting it aside, as long as it's not a firm commitment and we get to look at it one last time before we did it, I would be fine voting for it. I also wanted people to think about the idea of retired police officers. I know so many retired law enforcement in this area who I think either paid a small stipend or volunteering or whatever would make themselves available. They do have a very special set of skills that most of the rest of us do not. And rather than using their volunteer time at the food bank or something, why don't we use their volunteer time at something that the rest of us can't do? So there are other school districts across the country that are investigating this and looking at it. So I just think it might be worthwhile. Thank you.
Happy to look at
Would
that.
you be talking about a retired police chief by any chance?
Well, I was actually thinking, maybe that would lead our research. Maybe he could lead our
Real
home
sorry.
early.
With all due respect to that idea, I think we should think really carefully about what armed individuals we invite onto our campus, whether they're retired or not retired. I mean, that's a can of worms we should be clear we're considering. Again, whatever the will of the board will stand, but we may be setting aside money that nothing ever happens to. I mean, the sheriff was pretty clear that he couldn't staff this right now. I don't see that changing in the end of the school year. So I just want to make sure if the board chooses to set aside money for safety and it just sits there for a year, then we really did nothing. Because even if we talk about wanting a sheriff's deputy there, if they don't have it to provide, then we're just talking about nothing. Because the person that we want the service from is unable to provide it. So my concern is we set aside money that sits there for a year.
So I'd love to have us maybe come back in October and check in on this, and if we think that it's not going to happen, then we can talk more about how else we might want to use it.
And I guess my final comment on this before actually, I have a question. So are we proposing that we leave it in the LCAT? Okay. My personal feeling is that it feels good to think that we're promoting a faster response time, but because of the duties of sheriff and the range and the part-time position, I think it's a feel-good idea only. So while I feel for the community living outside of the Ukiah area, it does take a while to have people respond when there are emergencies. I don't see this as the solution that we need, but I'm willing to leave it in the plan as well.
So it's currently in the plan, so if the board is comfortable with that, we would have the board approve the strategic plan, action plan.
So I'd like to approve the strategic plan action plan, but I'm not comfortable with leaving it the way it is, unless we describe it differently.
So that's a mixed message that your chair is having a hard time seating in his brain?
Okay, all right, let me think.
If you'd like a change, maybe we should change it and then approve the plan.
So the superintendent proposed that we come back in October. So I would suggest that we approve that, nothing's going to happen until October. So I would suggest we approve the strategic plan with the exception of the $118,526 that's on page 27, and come back in October with a discussion on how to spend that money. Just leave it at that.
And if anything cuts loose before then, we would come to the board. We will not move forward on this action until we come back to the board.
I'll second that.
Okay, so that was a first and second for the approval of the strategic action plan.
But I just want to make sure.
Excuse me one second, is that correct?
With the caveat that we would bring the officer discussion back in October if we haven't done anything with it, but earlier if we're going to do something with it.
Gail?
But I want to be sure I understood what Megan was saying. we're leaving the money in the plan. It's going to be
Yes.
designated. Is that what you were saying, Megan? I didn't get that.
I mean, I don't think there's you might as well just approve the plan, and, you know, I'll just vote no. You have enough votes without it, right? I mean, I'm just trying to be, how do we simplify this, Tyler?
Well-
I guess my concern is we're approving language that says add a school resource officer to serve schools outside the city limits. There is no school resource officer that has been offered to us.
So I just want to clarify for my mind what your motion was. Are you approving the plan or the plan with exceptions?
I'm approving the plan with exceptions. I'm
And the
making a
exception-
motion for that.
And the exception was,
The $118,000, $118,526 listed on page 27 in green will come back to the board for further discussion in
so
October.
and just to continue that clarification, so the idea is just hold it out without any earmark on it. It's not being spent, we're doing nothing with it. Penny is guarding it with her CBO life, heart and soul.
That was my understanding of the motion that I seconded, yes.
Okay, so unless there's further discussion, we can either vote this in or vote this out. And if it's voted out, then we would need another motion that's different than what Megan and Ann are proposing.
President,
Yes, ma'am.
Interim President Nelson, just a clarification. So this means we should not continue to pursue this, the school resource officer idea.
That's what I'm saying.
My understanding is there's nothing to pursue until the sheriff comes back to you. What would you be pursuing? Or, I mean, did you want, I'm
Right,
just trying
if
to
they
move this
come,
process along.
if they come next month and say, Jason Iverson, we've got somebody.
Then you would come back to us in October. Right?
Or next month.
Or, oh, I see, if they come
No,
back,
not
you mean,
next
to tell you that tomorrow?
August.
Yeah.
In order, my understanding, I don't want to put words into the administration's mouths, but in order to have that conversation, it's nice to have it in the strategic plan. If it's not in the strategic plan, I imagine we could continue to talk about it, but the goals that we set forth here are in the strategic plan so they can carry on. So if you take it out, it might mute that conversation a little bit, even though I'm not a huge fan of that particular item, but it might mute it a little bit. So we can vote on this and vote this down, or we can vote on it and pass it. Do you guys need more discussion, or shall we take a vote?
Well, I think that we have three options now. We're going to just vote on it as it is and continue. But then Deborah is saying, the superintendent is saying that we will not do anything until it comes back before the board. And at the moment, that's going to be October. If somebody should call up before then we would bring it to the board before that, but you would still not make any commitment to the sheriff's department until coming back to the board. Is that?
I think I think her motion is to hold off on anything until October.
Okay.
I don't think I'm in the majority here, so I don't think I should be controlling this motion. I feel like our whole conversation about how we can best increase school safety, given the resources that actually exist and are actually being offered to us, is not the conversation we've been having. We've been talking about whether or not we want a sheriff's deputy at these extra sites, but that's not being offered to us. So to me, we would be having a conversation about $120,000 and how best we make sure that our schools are safe with the resources that actually exist. The school resource officer doesn't really exist. But I still think that somebody else should be making this motion because I seem to be the only one that wants to derail this. So I'm trying to, maybe I'll take away my motion and let someone else carry on. Sure, I'll remove my motion from the table.
Can we do that?
Sorry.
I seconded
All
a
right.
motion that no longer exists.
So I am willing to accept a motion of just about anything.
I move that we leave this money in the strategic plan with the understanding that no final, that it will be brought to the board for further discussion before any final commitments are made.
I'll second that motion too.
I would like to suggest that while you guys are working with, I'm just not a huge fan of hiring a sheriff for that position. I don't think it'll help response time. I think it's feel
Then you
good.
can vote no.
It would be great if we could think about other ideas that would secure our schools, like fences and snipers.
Is there, can I make a friendly amendment to your motion? Did I just even speak English? I don't think I did. May I make a friendly amendment? That we delete the 114 in the green from your motion, and we do all other aspects of the plan? Take a vote on that, and then we can come back to the other? Are you willing to entertain that?
We're trying just to approve the strategic plan. There's like 50 things on here, and we're arguing over one of them. So if we
Right.
could approve
Right.
the other 49, and then,
Well, she's pondering, she's looking at the she's looking at the item.
Is this, if you're
It's not
asking,
really working.
you're asking Gail?
I am asking the maker of the motion if she is willing to amend her motion. And if she says no, then I would suggest we do an up
All
or
right,
down
you
vote
just say
on
your
it.
amendment again?
My amendment is, your motion was to pass it as presented. And I would ask you to pass it as presented without the 114 on page 27, 118 on page 27. Pulling out that one item.
And Gail's motion was also included to bring anything back to the board before we
Before
took
any
action.
decision was made.
Right.
Gail, I think you ought to hold strong, and I think we should vote on it.
It's not what a president does. Be quiet.
I have a question.
Oh.
Don't we have to have the money in some category? So we can't just say we're going to take that money out and just put it in Never Never Land.
Well, Penny always finds a category.
No, but I mean, we have to have it say that
never, never.
in the plan.
It would be
Right.
ideal if it said that in the plan.
Yeah.
Or something.
It shouldn't say put it in Never Never Land?
Right. And we certainly could bring it back to the board before we move forward with anything.
All right, but the motion right now, without the amendment, is that it is in the plan.
Right.
So
Yes.
why don't we just vote on that, and if people are opposed to it, they can vote against it.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, let's vote.
I call the motion?
All
Call for a
those
vote?
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
No, I'm not opposed, because I think the motion is saying come
It's
back
okay.
and.
It is.
It's good.
It
All
is.
right, let's
I
move
think you're
forward.
holding a consistent position.
Okay.
That's correct.
Yes, whatever that was.
Now we're going to gavel for a public
Thank
hearing.
you. I'd like to open the public hearing for the local control accountability plan.
So remember that we are, for our LCAP, we actually cut and paste from our strategic plan into our LCAP. There are actually funds set aside in the state for next year to revise the LCAP template. I'm hoping someday we don't have to have two documents, but for now, we do. Our LCAP is 100 and some odd pages, 137 now, I think. So, and our strategic plan is 42 or something like that. So anyway, we do cut and paste directly from our strategic plan into the LCAP template. But we did want to do a little bit of, and remember the board, we have a public hearing today, and then we do an approval of the LCAP tomorrow. So no action will be taken today on the LCAP. We did want to update the board on some data, some updated data. So Katie is here to share some data with you, and then we'll ask if you have any questions about the LCAP. And I also have some data to share.
Good evening. So these are our initial LCAP metrics. We are closing out this year, so we don't have all the data in there. So what is in here is new data, because we did have our mid-year data presentation, and then in October we had our final. So I will be back in October to give you the final metrics from that are as most up to date as possible. So we have finished our school year. It was a great year, and although challenging in many ways, and we're finished with our DIBELS data. So if you look at the first component, our first metric is we look at third grade proficient or higher in reading. And I didn't put the SBAC data on there. Normally we present that together, but you've already seen that. So it's just new stuff on here. So if we look our third grade, over the last 4 years, we've increased the percent of students that are at or above benchmark on the DIBELS by 9%. And the next slide breaks that down by grade level. And so you can see the other grade levels. We've had a good increase in kindergarten. In 14-15, we only had about 25% of the students at the end of the year, and this year we had 40%. And we'll talk, when we get to some of the other data, I'm going to talk about a couple reasons why we think some of that's occurred. And then you can see first grade, and then second grade, we've had increases, third grade. One thing, and Dana and I were discussing earlier today, what we do notice, fifth grade is a little up and down, but we seem to kind of flatten out at fourth grade, and we've talked about some of the things that we want to focus on, continuing to work on fluency, because that's a major component of the DIBELS with our fourth and fifth grade students, and continuing to there's really only 3 components of the DIBELS at fourth and fifth grade. Third, fourth, and fifth, they do a reading passage, and they're looking at their words per minute, their fluency, and then their accuracy. And then they also look at their retell, so they read a story in retell. And then they have a close activity where they read a passage or read a sentence, and then they have to figure out what word fits in a blank, which is like a comprehension component. And so when we look at our data, we're kind of seeing that flatten off in fourth and fifth. So we're going to do a little bit more analysis to look, is it more around fluency or is it more around the comprehension as we're looking, because we're starting to see a trend that we're seeing at fourth and fifth. Although we had some increases, but we want to look at that. So if we go to this next chart, what this is showing is the end of year test. So we're just looking at the end of year, the composite score that takes all the sub-tests together, the percent at benchmark or above over the last 3 years. And you can see that these are different groups of kids, but the same grade level. Think of it that way. That district-wide, and the color coding, just to denote, is looking at the first year, 14-15, and then the last year, and was there a positive increase? Yellow is plus or minus 1 or 0, and then red is anything below that. So district-wide, we've got, we have been improving. We would like to improve more, but we can look that we're making gains there.
Katie, are you
Sure.
Are you going to talk about Nokomis at some point? I mean, they're
Yeah.
now or later?
Sure, we can talk about it now. Thank you.
Okay, just their
So
results
if
are remarkable.
Yeah, it looks good in the cohort too. So if we look at Nokomis right now, they went. You can look at their kindergarten in 14-15. They only had about 7%, and then 16, and then 44, and now 72. They are piloting an intervention program. It's called the 95% group. They learned about it at the DIBELS conference last year. They've come in and started professional development in January, and they've had small reading group interventions. And so they had already given the DIBELS at the mid-year. So really the where you see the actual effect is in the last end of year assessment. So we see great gains there. We just started that, so they're going to be piloting more next year, and I'm going to share this with the principals tomorrow, and we'll have a discussion. But we'll be, they're going to continue to pilot, and we'll discuss it more. I didn't get a chance to really dive deep into it, but it's a very focused intervention on skills that students need, and they focused on K1.
Which is
this
where
year.
you saw all the growth.
Yeah.
I ran into a teacher who was telling me about this from Nokomis, and it sounded really remarkable. And I hope we're not, I hope if this seems to be really genuine, that we spend a lot of specific time, not just
Looking at-
talking about it, but
Yeah.
making other people do it.
Yeah.
I guess, and maybe I probably could have worded that better, but that's.
Well, we're going to be looking at our multi-tiered systems of supports, and within that is your RTI for academics. And so that'll be a discussion that we're going to be having next year, and that has definitely come up. Do we want to look at another type of intervention at the K1-2 level? So they just started, and we'll get more information, and, you know, it's only been a couple months, so that's why we're piloting. But it looks really good so far, and they were really excited about their results. They felt
And
they've made some headway.
do we know any other schools who have used the same intervention?
I don't, but we'll do some
Looking
more.
into that?
Yeah, investigation. We weren't sure if it was going to happen this year, so it was kind of
Okay.
right in the middle of the year. But we'll report back to you about how that pilot's going, and our curriculum committee will look at it as well next year.
So for a program like that, when you guys do the research and you say, oh yeah, this works, how does that roll out? How do the other schools adopt it? Do you guys say, you shall, or do you ask them, would you like to do it, or do you have how does that conversation take place?
That would start with our principals and then our district curriculum committee. And, you know, we clearly have a need at that area. And then, you know, we would then bring that to the board, and if the board approved that, then that we would use that district-wide, so.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, how do we do that quickly and not take 5 years?
The other reason we don't, really want to look at trying it at another school next year is they are going to be implementing a whole new English language arts program. So, you know, I think, which has a lot of intervention components in it as well. And so we're just, you know, we don't want to do too much right at once.
I mean, I'm going to push on this too a little bit, Katie. Some results that are this dramatic, and a school who is feeling enthusiastic about it and not like this was really hard and terrible, I think is something we need to latch onto really quickly. I mean, going from a 7% proficient rate to 72 could be a total fluke. I don't know if it would swing that wildly if there was nothing kind of pretty important there. So I too echo Gail. Let's not spend too much time processing. If somebody's found something that's not overly expensive, is a useful tool teachers like, and you're seeing really good results, let's go for it. I'm sure Deb is just dying here. She's missing this. We're trying to like dictate what all your teachers should be doing next year.
Your employee.
Dealing with a flat tire and a child, so.
I was wondering about other schools observing, so they could see what it looks like.
Yeah, we'll do that. It was really, I'm not trying to say last minute, but it was pretty quick this year. They started I think the proposal came in December, and then they started in January. So yes, we definitely will have people observing, checking it out, getting more information about it. Because it's, 2 other principals saw the presentation by the 95% group at the Dibbles conference, Dana and Tina. So at least those guys have a background in it. But we will definitely be observing and tracking data a little bit more next year.
And Nokomis only used it with K or K1?
K1.
K1.
Yeah.
And they had a swing of 30 points for each of those grades.
Yeah, and if you look at, so this one is showing, and we'll look at the next slide, that'll also show from the beginning to the middle to the end. So this is just this year, looking at our beginning, middle, and end. And so we can look at that specifically, but if you look, you know, kinder went 31, 26, 40, and some of that was due to the scores at Nokomis, and first grade as well. We definitely noticed that pattern of the dip in the middle of the year, a little bit of a dip. And, you know, third grade was kind of flat. They came in at 49 and then they came out at 49. So if we look a little bit closer, you can see that we have a little improvement overall across, but we do have that dip pattern. And then if you look at Nokomis, you can see that the kinder was 31-21. They had taken a dip mid-year, and then they were up at 72, and then first grade was 29, 16, and 54. So we will definitely, I mean, it's a great celebration, and we want to learn more about that, and that's why we're piloting. So
My recollection, it's probably killing you that you keep getting interrupted, so
It's
thank
okay.
you for your patience. My recollection is that this dip is something that we saw last year as well.
yeah, so we're seeing the pattern of there's a little dip mid-year. And we've talked about, you know, the space between the assessments. It's kind of hard because it's right at the middle of the year, so that window's it's kind of a big window. So I think that partly has to do with that. So, and really what's most important is that the teachers are looking at the data, looking at their students, you know, so I'm not as worried about exactly where that is. But I think it's also remember that as the year goes on, the expectation of the student is going up. It's not a flat expectation. So, you know, the number of words that they have to read fluently increases. So that's another thing to be thinking about as they progress through the year.
Is the average reclassification occurs around what grade, third or fourth? Or?
Third and fourth.
I mean, can that be a factor here when kids aren't necessarily getting as much support, or I mean, I think the fourth is always a killer year anyway. I know it always was, and now it's even worse when I look at some of the textbooks that were up there. So can that factor in here in any way, and do we need to be giving more support to our recently reclassified students, although we do, don't we?
We do definitely
That's right.
monitor our reclassified students pretty closely. You know, we're required to do that for 4 years, but we could look into that. That hasn't come up as, we feel that that's a problem. I think it's more that the expectation of where the reader needs to be at fourth grade gets higher as you go. So if you were a little bit behind before, it's hard to get up to that level.
And Katie, wouldn't you say too that most of the kids are reclassified at fifth grade, not fourth?
We've had a lot of reclassifications at fourth.
But I'm just saying average.
I don't have that number, so I can't say. But when I was looking at as we were calculating the fifth grade, I can pull that and I'll share that. Just don't have that.
I hate to break your rhythm. Carolyn?
I just wanted to add one thing. I think, in my mind, one reason why fourth and fifth grade don't do as well is because the teachers don't teach reading like K3 do.
Yeah, it's not quite, you're learning from reading more than.
Well, you're supposed to be,
But
but
you
you also
so
need to
are
continue to
continuing
teach reading.
Yeah.
And that's a big problem in
Yeah.
this district.
And what's been really good with the new trainings is that we've had a lot of emphasis on the small group instruction and how to continue teaching reading. So, and next year, we have the 3, 4, and 5, we have 3 days of training throughout the year, and that will be part of that training, is really focusing on the small groups. Because that's really where you get, that type of instruction, where you're working with those kids individually or small groups.
And one more. Megan?
It's really nice to see some green here. I just want to pass that on. It's really nice to see. But I especially, Katie and Deb, if you could pass on my delight to Principal McCann and his staff. This is really neat. I'm really excited that they tried something new and had such success with it. And Deb, you kind of missed this conversation, but some of us were like, can we please accelerate whatever's working there as soon as possible? And what I'm hearing, and so outside of my wheelhouse, but I'm hoping that we're focusing on the new research and what people have learned about the new techniques for teaching reading, kind of echoing what Carolyn has been saying. I think, it's changed a lot. And what the teacher that was talking to me from Nokomis was saying is this was some really specific things they were taught that clearly were having a big impact. So.
Yeah, what's actually interesting is the research has not changed a lot. But what has changed is we've gotten better at articulating what the research is and what to do with that. So the National Reading Panel that came out in 2002, that is still the prime research. But it's how you do, it's, okay, so we all know teaching phonemic awareness is really important. I think we're getting better at how to do that. And so I think that's, the 95% group is very specific in here, I don't know this from going to any training, but I've talked to John and Becky Burford and Jeanette Spica, is that you're identifying what are the very specific skills that the students need, and then you're addressing those skills with a specific strategy to address that skill. So that's definitely what's changed, is how to do it. And then this is our cohort data over the last 4 years. So the green is a cohort that started in 14-15 in kindergarten, and you can see we've had good gains with that cohort. So these are the same, approximately the same students as we go across. And then that group in 15-16, because we were focused on K-1 with the reading teachers, so that group has had experience with reading teachers, and so we can see that we have good improvement there. So. And then this breaks that cohort down by school. And again, we've kind of talked about how we see a little bit of flattening out in that 4th and 5th. So English language learner, I put the redesignation rate at 5th grade. I put an asterisk there because we always get a few more that come in at the end, so it's not a done number. So we'll come back, but it's pretty close. But like last year, we found a few more students that we just didn't get it entered into the system. So there's an asterisk there, just to let you know that. The number of students who become English proficient on CELT, we don't have a new number, but I wanted to let you know we will have the LPAC, and we have received lots of the results, but not all of them yet. We're going to be sharing those with our principals tomorrow and talking about how to read the student report. And so I will report the number of students proficient on the LPAC in October. And we've talked about the number, why we see a decrease. We've had a lot of changes to the reclassification process and what assessments in terms of the CELT, and it's changed quite a bit. So we will get new guidance from the state on reclassification, and we will probably be coming back to you next year to look at our, to redo our reclassification redesignation process. So some schools, we've seen an increase at Eagle Peak, and that's been great. And although we're down district-wide, Eagle Peak and Ukiah have had an increase in the percent of 5th grade students. And then our others are down, but again, it's kind of hard to look at, and we'll come back to you with that. Our rate of teacher misassignment this year was, it was technically 0.28%, but it gets hard to read. It was 0.3, rounded to 0.3%. That's a slight increase from 14-15. That is a very small, I think that's one assignment. So we do pretty well on our teacher misassignment. And then our A through G, just to let you know, normally I'd be reporting on grad rate from 16-17, you know how it's usually delayed a year. And the preliminary results that were embargoed came out, and then they took them away. And the reason they did that is the state has changed the way they are calculating the cohort for the 4-year cohort. We will come back to you in, I don't know if the data will be ready in August or not. We haven't seen it. It was supposed to be already out again, and we haven't seen it again. So when we do get that data, we'll share it. But we are expecting that our grad rate will go down a little bit, and the reason for that is the cohort has changed, and students that, the biggest effect will be students that used to transfer to an adult school did not count in the cohort, and now they will.
Oh.
So, and they won't have graduated. So that will have a slight effect on our grad rate, and we'll come back to you with that information. But we did get our A through G rate, and it dipped slightly, but if you look overall, we are up 10%. The number on the left is Ukiah High, the number on the right is the district. And when you look at our subgroups, if you look at over those 4 years, we're up. And, you know, I spoke with Gordon and talked about what they're doing to focus on A through G, and it's pretty exciting. They've had lots of discussion around A through G. And what they're working on is really now looking at these groups of students and being very targeted in counseling and supporting those students to make sure that they're A through G. They've added ag science classes that are now A through G approved, so we really feel that's going to help students, because if they're in the ag pathway, they can still become A through G approved. We've added other courses that are A through G approved. We are expanding our STEM science program, and so that really captures some students, and those courses will be A through G approved, so that captures students that maybe wouldn't be in an A through G track for science. So those are some of the things we're really working on to improve that. And we will have the 17-18 data most likely in the fall, which is unusual. The state will now be reporting the graduation data almost, you know, so that students will graduate, and then we'll get it in December. It won't be as delayed. So we'll unless that changes, which it could, but that's what we think now is what we'll start getting more updated earlier graduation data.
Katie, what is our goal?
So our goal is to be above the state average for A through G, and right now the high school itself is working on their 40% goal.
40, okay.
Yeah,
Is that the
and
state average?
that's not the state average, is slightly higher, but then we want to meet that goal and then get, you know, keep moving up. So that's
Because we
what
always talk
they're-
about college and career, and that makes it sound like it's 50-50, but is that really the right rate, or what's best, or what do we think economy-wise? Do we need more career or more college, or?
We
you
need
know?
more college as well, because that, if you look at that, you know, we're not to the state average, so we would want more college, A through G, and we're working on that. And then we will have more reporting on the college readiness indicator next year, so we'll have comparison reporting on that, which takes into account A through G, the CTE completion, dual enrollment. It's kind of a mix of data. So we'll share that out because we'll have 2 years to compare.
And are we still looking for some kind of software that can track our students after they get out of Ukiah High School?
We've had some discussions about that, but we haven't moved on looking at any software right
I mean,
now.
for example, they have completed A through G, but what happens when they get to college? Have they completed it at a deep enough level that they can maintain an academic and, you know, success in college? Or do they have to go through remedial work at UC or at SEN?
We do get some data from the community colleges, and we can look at that data, but it is hard to track students because it's all voluntary. I mean, we can't require people to respond.
And it shouldn't be voluntary.
Yeah. And then attendance, we don't have new overall for the year, but we'll share that with you when we're finalized our attendance. It's been a tough year with attendance. We're kind of flat, but with the fire, which if you look at month three, the fire happened, and then these months don't go month to month, they're about halfway through. Month three is when the fire occurred, and then right after month 4. So you can kind of see that in month 4, the 93.8. So we've decreased slightly, but we also, if you look at month 8, that had the day where students were
Afraid to come to
afraid
school.
to come to school, and we had large attendance losses. So we're continuing to focus. If we look at the high school, our 9th and 10th graders are 11th, 12th this year was an area that they focused on because, like the prior year, that wasn't the grade level. And that's those good habits. The way this key works is 8%, which is our goal, is green, 8 to 9 is yellow, or I should say 8 to 8.9, and then 9 and above is red.
And remember, the state average for this one is about 10%. So
We have a big goal there.
we do. Interestingly, though, Katie, when I was looking at the chronic rate for 16, 17, it was 18.5%. And if I just take my crude superintendent math on this year, I think our chronic absenteeism rate will be down compared to last year, when I just look at these numbers.
Yeah, and we'll see also just these are active students, and it doesn't include UISA and South Valley because they're positive attendance, and that doesn't get all wrapped up till the very end. So we'll have more data. But when we've looked at that, you know, we've had some challenges. You can see Eagle Peak this year. So hopefully that will improve after people are a little more settled. And then at the elementary level, our 4th grade, we really need to thank our 4th grade teachers because those kids wanted to come to school and they were healthy. So I don't know if they were wiping down the tables a lot. No, it's not attendance rates chronic, but we really want to thank everyone. It's been a lot of work to work on attendance this year. And what we do, we still have our highest rates are in TKK. And I was just talking to Dana as we were looking at her data. One of the things they're going to do is that when they do kindergarten registration, they're going to have, before they go into the classrooms, because they usually, you know, they'll get their, they'll go into the different classrooms, they're going to do a little education workshop where they'll have a couple stations.
Dana talked about that tonight.
Yeah. Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Let me repeat myself. Anyways, so people are looking at their data. These reports have been sent out to principals all year, thanks to Chris Kinney, who's been really great sending these out and working on their chronic absenteeism. So these are students that, you know, were 18 days, close to 18 days or more.
You know, just throwing it out for my tiny little bit of expertise of working with 0 to 5ers, you do have the parents who are very possessive because they think their children are going to get sicker or get somebody else sick or something like that. But I really find the statistic that shows the number of days you're absent from kindergarten, the less you read in 3rd grade. And I think there's some really great graphics that show that. And I think that most parents don't get that connection. And we're going to have to say it probably 5 different ways for people to really hear it.
So Ann, I'll just add, we have our grant, our attendance grant, and so this year we've been working on messaging. And so we're going to roll the year out with things like that. So we've got some graphics and some, that will start the year off with our
Great,
families.
good.
Yeah, Jason Iverson and Chris Kinney have done, they've put together some really good documents that have information like that on them.
And there, when I go around visiting relatives in different places, that a lot of school districts have already put together these, you know, fabulous brochures, and I think we should really research that rather than spending time.
We have.
That's what we've done.
And I
borrowed.
was going to say, I think that figure is so important, but also I think I see in other communities too, where there are lots of articles about how their absence impacts the money the school district has to spend on their older siblings. You know, it's enough, adds up to enough money for 3 or 4 reading teachers sometimes. So
Yeah,
they don't
that's
make
a good
that
way to-
connection either.
Yeah.
Is there any way we reward kindergarten teachers for visiting the parents? Because there's a lot of research about that initial home visit by the kindergarten teacher. And I know that's above and beyond what they normally do. But I wonder, I think we should just stay open to that, that maybe there's some sort of reimbursement, reward, I don't know what, but my understanding is that that's a huge influence. And whenever you're giving information, if you show the little cute little poster of the kid who comes to school, learns how to read, and the kid who doesn't, the difference between a parent seeing that and a parent being handed by it by a trusted person, it's like more than 100% difference in the uptake of whether or not they really receive that information. So, so I don't know, I don't think we should ignore that. I think some kindergarten teachers kind of do it on the sly anyway, on their own. But even though that's out of the box and it's unusual, I would hope that we would look at that.
So the next slide is
Katie,
our,
I'm sorry,
Sure.
Carolyn had her pen up. You guys, I would.
oh, I'm sorry, I
No?
can't.
No, I did.
I would
Okay.
highly like to encourage you guys that in this discussion, that if you have something to say, that you
Just say
volunteer,
it.
because I'm apparently out to lunch.
And I can't always see that
I
they're
just-
up,
Yeah.
so I'm sorry.
Look over and see all
Or
the
put the
pens up.
pins up so Katie can see that you'd
Wave
like
them
to speak.
around.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I just wanted to comment again on Grace Hudson's attendance. And I don't know if we have any insight as to why their attendance is so good.
Well, one, they have a great incentive program. I was talking to Jason about this today. He said they have a really good, strong incentive program that's wrapped into their PBIS. And they just, I don't know if they received it, but they received an award for their PBIS. And I think
Right.
those two things are very connected.
Okay. We need to replicate that at other
Yeah.
places.
Okay, we did receive, it's called the annual adjusted dropout rate. It's not a cohort dropout rate, but I did want to share that this year, in 16-17, we had one student drop out in 8th grade compared to 3 the prior year, so that's good. And like I said before, when we get the updated information, we will get that out to you. The last one is our goal 3, parent involvement. So this year we did our survey again, and our goal is to be at 80% or above, and we have 83% of our parents feeling they're meaningfully involved in their education of their child. So that was great. And I didn't put it on here, but the percent of parents that responded to the survey increased by about 4%. So we have more parents responding. And I really want to thank Jason and the liaisons who work really hard at coordinating that and getting that information to us. And then last, the number of parents who've attended strategic plan LCAP input meetings. We only had 39 this year. We had larger DLAC turnout one year, so we want to continue to work on trying to get more parents at those meetings. And we brainstormed some of those ideas with the Parent Advisory Committee, and so we have some ideas of how to make sure those parents show up. Yes.
You guys are grown-ups. I trust that you will be courteous and go for it.
I'm missing do we not normally report on suspension and expulsion rates on this?
So, I'm sorry, we have not done that yet. We are cleaning up some of our data. We had some changes we found out in the way we're reporting suspensions. And so we will bring that back to you, but it's not all
It's not all done yet.
Yeah,
Okay.
Clean.
so we did not want to share that yet.
Okay.
So we will share that too.
And we also have some survey data to share with the board. It's an additional packet at your table. And you have the actual surveys there, but we just pulled out a couple of pieces, and I'll highlight it for you. But our classified staff perception survey, we've actually had a very substantial increase in the number of participants, which is great. Since 15-16 school year, we've had an increase of 35% participation, so that's super positive. That survey has 10 questions and then 4 open-ended questions. So the top 3 there, 88% of the staff agreed their school and working environment is safe. 87% agreed that they're aware of our district's mission, vision, and strategic plan, and 87% agree that superintendent is approachable and responsive. So those were the top areas, the ones that were highest rated. Areas of opportunity, 78% of staff agreed that their site or department provides them support that to do their best, and 74% agree that their input is valued and respected. So we have a couple of areas of opportunity there to work with our classified employees, and then we showed the greatest change over time. So an additional 6% of staff agreed that they're aware of our mission, vision, and strategic plan. However, 8% fewer agreed that their site department administration provides them the support they need to do their best. So we really need to work on that next year. And then 7% fewer agreed that the district level administrators are approachable and responsive, and 7% fewer agreed that their input is valued and respected. So that's an area that we want to put our heads together on as managers to focus on next year. Our staff perception survey, we had 300 respondents this year, which is really great. That's an 85% response rate, and we've grown that by 30% over 3 years. And so the certificated staff survey has 30 questions and 5 open-ended. Strengths, 97% of staff agreed they're incorporating strategies to support English learners, and that has actually had the greatest change over the last 3 years. It's grown by 12%. So as Barbara is on her way to retirement, we've definitely praised her for her good work in getting that. 94% of staff agreed they've modified their instructional practices to help students meet Common Core standards. 94% of staff agreed they've participated in district-wide professional development. 93% agree that superintendent is approachable and responsive, and then 91% agree their input's valued and respected and their working environments are safe. So those are the highlights, and we select more there because there are more questions. Areas of opportunity, only 53% agreed they're given the opportunity to collaborate with colleagues from other district sites, something we really could focus on. 59% agree that they use Google Classroom, although that has increased by 12% over the course of 3 years. So it's increasing, it's still at 59%. 61% agree that their school's student behavior intervention system effectively helps their students at risk. And then 73% agree they use Google Apps and that key decisions are made collectively at their schools. So those are some areas of opportunity for us to put our heads around on how to make those go higher. And then the greatest areas of change are, I talked about English learner strategies in their classroom, using Google Classroom, and then 10%, an additional 10% agreed that they have opportunity to discuss how to respond when student learning or behavioral challenges present themselves. And an additional 9% agreed that counseling services are adequate, although only 75% agree that we have adequate counseling services. So as we get more, we want more, I think. And then we talked about Google Apps, and we've got some change related to, we talked about collaboration. That has gone down with other colleagues from other district sites. And then 4% fewer agree they've modified their instructional practices, although it's at 94%. And then 2.5% fewer staff members agree that PLC collaboration has improved student learning in their classes. So just a few areas of opportunity. 2.5% fewer over the last 3 years agree that PLC collaboration, professional learning communities collaboration, has improved student learning in their classes. So just an area to look at. On the parent survey, we've increased by 11% over 3 years.
Can I interrupt for
Yep.
1 second? I know you're on a roll.
Yes.
61% of the staff agreed that their school's student behavior intervention system effectively helps their students at risk. It would be really interesting. We've put a tremendous amount of resources into that. I'm dying to know what their perception of the reason why it's not helping, or maybe why it's really not helping. I'm just
We can
kinda
dig
surprised.
deeper into that. In our secondary schools more, there's a perception that PBIS is not changing student behavior, that it's actually, I think there's a misperception about PBIS, that when we implement PBIS, we don't suspend students. And so there were some open-ended comments about that. It's really a misperception because we do both, as you all know. So anyway, we need to dig into that a little bit more. The parent survey, 39% of our parents responded to that, so that's up by 11% over 3 years. Has 19 questions to it, and it was really very positive. We look at satisfactory or higher on that survey as making great progress. So 98% of parents rate the overall quality of their child's school as satisfactory or higher. We had a hard time, our goal really is to get at least to 80%. And so you can see the highest level of rating there. And the areas of opportunity, but still they're at 86, 87, and 88% satisfaction was the overall quality and service of transportation. That is seen one of the greatest things of change, that it's decreased. And then 87% of parents rate the question that teachers and staff asked for their input about concerns, interests, just to 87%, but that's still a good level. And same thing with the overall quality and service of the food, of the child nutrition services. So anyway, it's overall really, we were very pleased with the results. Parent satisfaction of school cleanliness has decreased by 3%, yet we've added more custodians, so we need to kind of dig into that a little bit more. And then transportation quality has decreased. We know we've been down 5 bus drivers this year. I'm not surprised by that. Students, last piece here. We actually had 15 questions that we asked students, and the majority of questions received a positive response, so that's really great. 98% of students agreed that they had adequate access to their personal academic data. I think ARIES has helped with that. I think getting our teachers to keep their grade books updated in ARIES has helped with that. We certainly still need to do more there. 96% of our students were satisfied with their school's cleanliness. So it's interesting to see that that's gone down for parents, but still 96% of students were satisfied. 94% of students are performing well academically. 92% of students are satisfied with their schools. Areas of opportunity, 64% of students are not satisfied with their school's food. 40% of students are not satisfied with school transportation services. And 29% of students do not feel safe. Interestingly, this survey was given pretty close to right after the Parkland school shooting. But that question saw the greatest decline over 3 years. I'm not surprised by that either, considering what's going on in our nation. So it's really great to see this data, and we'll be working over the summer to respond to anything additional that we might be able to do. So in a nutshell, you also have all the data here, the actual data for all the questions. So you can put it in your data binders for future reference.
On the one about parents who don't feel that teachers and staff ask for their input about concerns, interests, and whatever, can that be put in the form of a reminder at conference time?
Yes.
I know there's so much to cover, but it is such a key thing to start, or end a conference with.
Yes.
somebody did I think it was Rod Gabrielson one year, did a whole thing about a one sheet on doing parent conferences, and I used that for 25 years of teaching. It was so fabulous, just things you didn't think of. You're so nervous about someone being unhappy with you.
This is the closing of the public hearing. And this is the opening of the public hearing, item D3, for the approval for disposal of obsolete instructional materials.
Just to remind the board, the LCAP will come back tomorrow for approval. We'll have a very short, we think, we'll have a very short board meeting tomorrow at 5:30.
Good evening again. We're bringing back our materials for obsolete. So 2 board meetings ago, we brought to you the estimated value for the obsolete English language arts curriculum. And we are, right now, all that material is at the sites. We've offered the books to students. We did have one community member interested, and we've set up an opportunity for them to go through the materials. So we are now doing our public hearing and asking for approval of the, we will be recycling the materials.
The public hearing is closed. Is there a motion to that effect?
I move that we close the public hearing.
Sorry, let me restate that.
Okay.
The public hearing is closed. We're already done with that. Can we approve the disposal of obsolete instructional materials?
I move the disposal of the obsolete instructional materials.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
And I just want to send a thank you to all the custodial support and teachers for inventorying their books and getting them into where we needed to move those. And it's a big process. So just want to thank everybody for working on that.
Can I ask one question? Who wants our books?
The Developing Virtue, Instilling Goodness School
Oh, wonderful.
requested to,
They want that book.
They may.
they may, so.
Does anyone want the science desk?
They have asbestos in them.
Oh, I like that.
I want the science desks, at least
Oh,
two.
the science desks. I thought you said tests, and I was like,
It sounds like we need to have an auction for
yeah.
those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Bidders right here.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Katie.
All right, moving on to item E1, for review and approval of 2017-18 and 18-19 one-time funds.
And Penny, we're not asking for any approval on this tonight, right? This is just an
gonna
information
review
item.
Where we are with it.
And Penny, I believe this was also attached to the board packet last Friday.
So this is, currently we have one-time funds from the current year, 17-18, and then we have the possibility of one-time funds for next year, depending on the enacted budget that's not yet enacted. So just reviewing previous slides from the December board meeting on 17-18 money, one-time funds. I'm just going to run through this. You guys have seen this before. And this is also this is one-time needs. So this is our one-time funds, and then this is our one-time needs that we looked at. That had not been board approved. However, what has been board approved, this is where we are currently. In January, the board approved 17-18 one-time money, $792,000 for textbooks, and then the remainder, a little over $500,000 for deferred maintenance of facilities. In March, we decided to fund, or the board approved funding some of the textbooks from supplemental concentration grant funds. which then freed up the part of the one-time money, but we won't know exactly how much until we close the books. So in other words, that amount won't be final until we close the books, and we'll bring it back to you at that time, the remainder of the 17-18 one-time money. So looking at next year's one-time funds, that was a much bigger number until today, basically. So we're at, which, you know, 938,000 is a lot. And they do have, every time they present us with this one-time funds, they're saying that it is paying back for previous mandated cost claims for things that the district's required to do, it's mandated by the state. So then you were allowed to make a claim against the cost for those mandated requirements. And they never funded it for the longest time, and this is their way of paying that back. But they also said that even though this is paying you back for something you've already spent, you may but aren't required to use these funds for state standards implementation, like textbooks or so forth, instructional materials, teacher induction, technology, infrastructure, and deferred maintenance needs. So they're kind of trying to double dip with the same amount of funding. From the next year's money, in May, the board did go ahead and approve $100,000 of the estimated $938,000 for collaborative furniture for next year. And from the $100,000, they wanted us to set aside, or you wanted us to set aside the $40,000 for the Pomalita science furniture. So thinking that at when I was preparing this, we thought there was more one-time money, so we wanted to talk about some of the
Ways to spend it.
yes,
Needs.
the one-time needs that the district has, which this is a list of facility needs unfunded at this time currently on our 5-year deferred maintenance plan. So again, summary of the 17-18. We spent some on deferred maintenance. We are going to finalize the textbook amount when we close the books to see how much we were able to fund from supplemental concentration grant. We won't know until we close. 18-19 summary. We'll know an actual amount. I put in, Gabe and I had great hopes that we'd possibly be able to solve our Grace Hudson heating and cooling system problem, which is still there. Just because the money's evaporated doesn't mean that our need has. But so that's in the slide from before the amount was reduced. So in this slide also talks a little bit about the unappropriated general fund ending balance that will determine when we close the books in September. Previously, the board had designated half of that to go toward the 9% on the reserves. I was just making a note of that, so that as that occurred when we close the books, that would just be a reminder. And that's pretty much the summary of our 17-18 and 18-19 one-time funds.
Penny, I think I have a solution for the $1.5 million for Grace Hudson. We can buy a lot of jackets and tank tops and distribute them.
And fans, those little personal fans with the spray bottle on them. Yeah.
Apparently, we have a question.
I actually did have a comment about Grace Hudson. I wasn't being as charming as Tyler. I can't do that. I just cannot bring myself to spend, personally, I can't justify $1.5 million for the school that's the newest school in the best condition of all of our facilities. And when I look at that other list of all the needs in our schools, I just can't bring myself to do it. So I'm asking, when you bring that back, can you provide data on how many days it actually was broken? I mean, Tyler was being flippant, but if it's 2 or 3 days a year, the kids can kind of, I think we should think of other solutions. I'm also interested, I'd like an estimate, again, I'm way outside my wheelhouse, of old-fashioned the things on top of the classrooms, like old school style of doing heating and, because teachers like having control of their own classrooms. The portables are always delightfully cold, and I really would be interested in,
Board Member
again,
Van Zandt,
trying not to fix it.
I agree that there's a lot more information that we could provide on that. And so we are looking at an engineer's feasibility study for a much more detailed cost estimate. And we could at that time bring a full explanation of exactly what's wrong. Gabe could probably give it to us right now, but I think it might be more appropriate once we have that additional information to come back and explain to you what the
challenges are.
Yes.
But I would really like to know what the old
Sure.
school solution would be as well.
Right, okay.
So it sounds like when we're doing our engineering study, that we need to make sure that the engineer knows that we're open to different options.
Including just abandoning the new system.
Right, and that's
start-
also been in our thoughts as well, so.
The other thing that I want to put on the list for a while, sorry, I thought we were just barging in, is now I want to implement whatever system they just used at Nokomis everywhere. So I don't know how we might inspire people to do that.
Are we not
but-
talking about heating anymore?
No, we're not talking about heating anymore.
The-
Whatever.
95%.
Why?
Heating. Well, somebody thought they had some new HVAC system.
No, there's no new HVAC. Oh my gosh, I switched, sorry. So I'm talking about the unbelievable Dibbles results. So if I had my choice and I had a little bit of money, I'd say, how can we roll that out even faster? Since sometimes money can help move things faster. So I just want that on somebody's list for the future. But I
Forget
know
the
we're
HVAC,
not.
do the readings.
I do the rating thing. But I understand we're not making any.
Gail?
I haven't looked at the whole list recently, but when we had a DAC meeting, somehow because I asked Deborah and she said I could put it up there, reducing the horrible heat situation in the gym at Pomalita, did that ever get studied or never get put in or on any list? Because that affects so many situations.
It's in our 5-year deferred maintenance plan. Gabe is nodding his head. It's in our 5-year deferred maintenance plan.
It is. Okay. So I'm going to go way out on the limb again because I see the all-weather field is still on this list when admin voted to take it off because there were so many other things that were more important in terms of student everyday activity.
I actually just picked a few of the
Okay.
unfunded, and I tried to pick something from each site, just to
Okay.
give an example of some of the large unfunded
okay.
projects. That's all that is
random
me randomly picking something
Okay.
from each
But the
site.
Pomalita
Just to,
air conditioning for the gym is on some list somewhere.
It's in the 5-year deferred maintenance plan.
Okay,
And
great.
I'll just say that we have a lot of unfunded facilities
Yes.
needs, and at some point, we'll be coming to the board to talk about a facilities bond in the future.
right.
Yes.
That's probably our next step to
Probably
our
in 2020, on the 2020 election.
Um,
But we'll see.
Yeah, I was just noticing in the paper that 80 or 70% of the bonds in California actually, I think it was Sonoma County and here, were passed again. And I think when we keep asking for more and more things and dealing with this, I think we need to consider something because we can't ever take care of all of this and consider maintaining our salary increases for everybody.
And I think too, in probably the past 3 years, we've identified more of the needs that have been there, but now are identified.
Megan?
Just want to point out that the campus HVAC replacement at Ukiah is $200,000 as opposed to 1.5 million. That's all.
Right, and it'll be really interesting when we
I don't
do
think you knew
describe
ring
that.
did.
Different
Ring
system.
It is.
It's a different style system.
That's what I'm saying, go to the Ukiah system.
On that note, I would like to close this public hearing.
That one's not a public hearing.
No, that was a public hearing.
I want to open the public hearing. I X'd my thing out too fast.
Thank you, Ben.
I love this guy. He's just trying to use the gavel.
Just adjourn right now.
You know what? Before we open the hearing, or even if we're open, can we have a little bathroom break?
5 minute break.
Only if it means you get to use the gavel again.
We're pausing this public hearing for a second. I'm desperate too. has been resumed after the bathroom break.
Yeah,
Thank you.
so glad we're clear on that.
Remember you're on television?
So our
Yes, he does.
18-19 budget for adoption, we're going to look at our typical budget cycle, so we see where we are in the year. I'll talk a little bit about May revision, even though it's changed. We'll look at this year's estimated actuals, next year's budget that includes a multi-year projection. We'll look at the other funds besides the general fund of the district. And then legally, we have the education protection account that gives us some funding within our regular funding of the LCFF, and then local reserve cap and reserve substantiation. So away we go. Here's our cycle, starting at the top of the year with the adoption of the LCAP in the budget. You'll recall the three different colors signify 3 different years. In September, we close what will be last year, which is this year, and then just so on for the cycle. I think you're all pretty familiar with it. Here's the local control funding formula, changes in the current year and the proposed budget year from second interim to the May revise and what the difference is. The May revise, you'll see where my little arrow's pointing at the 3%. That's, as of today, the budget agreement is calling for 3.48%. So those numbers are already outdated. I'll bring you an update on that in August. Some of the other programs, there's talk about additional early education, preschool, expansion, in addition to additional daily rate increases. The one thing concerning on the expansion is they're using one-time money to do that. I would be concerned about the sustainability ongoing. Special education has the COLA increase because the true COLA is 2.71. It's just that the LCFF is getting funded above the COLA that will give us, provide us with additional ongoing money above the top of the target. There's some special ed finance reform going on. They have been looking at the need for all districts to have more funding. It's just that they're not funding it now. So they've even put together this 1.3.
I think we need to study that need a little bit longer.
Yeah, the 1.3 billion price tag on this particular bill is not likely to happen due to the cost, but there are a lot of people on board with it. Career Tech Ed sustains $200 million in ongoing funds, and this is where it's looking to work the K-12 component with the community college. The community college currently has a strong workforce program, and so there's going to be a committee that's going to work on that, and it just seems like it may be something along the lines of our adult ed block grant where K-12 or the adult schools and the community colleges kind of work together to get the best outcome for the students. The Cte Incentive Grant program, if it gets signed, would extend that indefinitely. Just this is information that I wanted to share with you so that you're aware of it. The accountability piece, the LCAP expenditures will be part of our auditors' list of things to do. So they'll select random samples and look to see, verify that expenditures were consistent with the actions that were noted in the LCAP. So that's matching the LCAP to our budget, which we build the budget based on the goals of the board, which are to improve achievement through the actions of our LCAP and strategic plan.
Penny, who conducts this LCAP audit?
Our independent auditors.
The regular independent
Yes.
auditors, that's just added on to their
Right.
fee.
It'll be part of what they do. Each year, there's an audit oversight board that directs the independent auditors to focus on certain areas.
Right.
And this will be one that they add, or that is included in
I'm
their
glad it's just
typical-
not a separate process.
Right. Not to my knowledge would it be separate. This is our look at the estimated actuals, just very summarized. And again, until we close the books, which takes all summer to process, which brings me to remembering to thank our wonderful fiscal department for all their work on bringing this budget to us. Built in our new software system, Escape, which everybody's loving, but that it's been rather trying working with two different systems and all of the challenges that that brings. But they've been champs about it and so far have survived. So we're very grateful for that. So now we're on to the 18-19 proposed budget. So just as I had just mentioned, our basic assumptions are that this budget's built based on, while maintaining fiscal solvency, also the driving forces being the LCAP and strategic plan as to how we allocate our resources. Our estimated average daily attendance will be 5587, which is 19 or 20 more than last year's adopted budget. So we did grow, but not a lot last year overall, from P2 to P2. The 3.0 is outdated. It should be now 3.48, as long as that's what actually gets signed into an enacted budget.
So, Penny, can I just ask on that? Then at the first interim, you'll bring back?
I'll bring it unofficially to you in August, when we always adopt our budget for the most part before the governor enacts the state budget. And in August, I'll bring what the differences result in unofficially, and then officially you'll see it at the first interim in December. But I'll bring preliminarily what that change means in August.
Okay.
Kind of a highlight, a summarized version. So starting with 18-19, in less than 6 years, they've brought us to all the way back to 07-08 funding, 100% of the target. So, but then plus from the 2.71 to the 3.48. So that amount of difference is additional above the 100% target. That's how they did that, rather than setting a new target and making the gap. Now, that could still happen, not maybe this year, but eventually. But for now, they're just funding it higher than the actual COLA. So that's how
we'll just be done with this gap conversation, and we'll just move forward.
Possibly,
Yes.
that possibly.
Stop talking about the gap.
Yeah, we don't
It's
have
just
to talk
confusing
about
for
it in
people
18-19.
anyway. I'm glad that it's gone.
So our UPP's at 75%, and we're hoping to maintain that with all our efforts. So this is just a summary of the revenues, and I noted on the contributions what makes up the amount of restricted programs that don't have enough revenue to balance to their expenditures, and therefore we contribute from the unrestricted side to the restricted side, and this is the detail of that. And this is the unrestricted side of the budget for the revenue side. Then here's the expenditure piece on the unrestricted side, and I've described what we've used with our salary and benefits. The step and column percentages are different for certificated and classified. The certificated amount we use to cover those additional costs when certificated folks move step and column on the salary schedule is a little over 0.5%, while the classified is about 2% each year. We do have a reserve of 4 FTE teachers, which is standard for us when we build our budget, so that when we have those situations where the kids don't come in the nice, neat package of however many students, 24 to 1, K3, or or 34, I believe, at the high school level, or then sometimes we need to put a teacher, place a teacher, and for whatever other reasons that I'm sure Nicole knows. Last year at this time, we'd already used 2 of the reserve. And this year, my understanding is we still have the 4 reserve right now. So, and we will adjust that at first interim as well, because we'll know who we hired and what we needed to do to balance our classes. And then very specifically, the certificated salaries, classified salaries, employee benefits that go with that do not include any extra expense for any type of an increase based on the fair share formula, because we don't know exactly what that will be yet. So that is not included in here. And then all the supplemental concentration grant positions, per the strategic plan are in there. The other operating expenses, there's a summary of what that makes up, what makes up that number. The other sources transfers out is a small contribution estimated for the cafeteria fund, and then the amount that goes to adults in corrections to fully take care of our obligations there. And I believe that funding comes in about a year late, so sometimes we have more students when the prior year funding's what we're using, which we may have had less students, so that's why sometimes there'll be a contribution there. The funding doesn't follow, always match.
Can I, through the board president, can I ask, at some later date, it doesn't need to be now, and I don't even know if it needs to be a board presentation. It definitely doesn't need to be a board presentation, but 2.1 million for consulting services is just kind of strikes me as a lot, and I'm sure I'm not questioning the expenses, but I'd love to see just a listing of what those are at some point.
Sometimes we use supplemental assignments for people that aren't on the payroll, and so they're paid as a vendor.
Like what?
So,
Can you give me?
Like a retired teacher, you mean?
Yeah. Oh, some of the counselors are paid that way, that's right.
Not our school site counselors. Some of the,
No, the contract ones. Yeah.
Yeah, I had
Yeah.
emailed that question, and I was wondering, I didn't know how hard it would be to put together a list, but I would.
Absolutely. We
you
can
seem to
give
have it in
you-
a spreadsheet, so must draw from somewhere.
Mhm.
This is coming.
Yeah.
I just sometimes wonder if we hold on to contracts because we're used to doing them for years after year, and it'd be good to look at them again.
One thing that this district does that I don't know if we were much bigger, we'd be able to do, but we do a zero-based budget. We build our budget from scratch every year. And a lot of districts our size or, bigger, of course, they just roll their budgets. So, but ours is built from scratch each year. If that,
I'm not sure that's necessarily good or bad. Do you have an analysis about whether or not that's a good thing, or is it just time-consuming?
well, I think it helps with the accuracy, for sure. But we could look at that, what the differences are. Maybe we could save some time. Roll it. So the multi-year projection, this is just preliminarily the background on that. It is a requirement. The county office and then subsequently the state use it as a measure of our financial soundness when we certify as either, positive, qualified, or negative. We do so based on our ability to pay our obligations in the current year and the 2 subsequent years. Projections are just based on what we know right now, and ours has already changed because we know that our revenue has changed. So this is just telling you that it's not a forecast, which would be more higher implied reliability factor, but that every time the underlying factors change, so will our projections. But I think you guys are used to that as well. So, and this is my slide that, again, emphasizes the fact that additional expenditures for a salary increase if any, is not in the multi-year projection because we don't yet know what the fair share formula calculation will net to. But we would bring a revised multi-year projection anyway to the December 1st interim board meeting. And this just, the bottom paragraph just talks about when we do the fair share formula computation by the end of October each year. We'll add the true-up calculation based on actuals for 17-18 to the estimated amount for 18-19, and that combined amount through all the approval processes, then if, finally would get paid in, if any, would get paid in January of 2019, retroactive back to July 1st of this year. So this is a look at revenues, expenditures, and the net increase, decrease for the general fund unrestricted side. And then more importantly really is the fund balance, which when we get down to the green part, that's the reserve, we have for 18-19, the reserve is always on the combined unrestricted and restricted side. But bottom line, next year, not including any salary increase expenses, almost the 9%, and then 8.5%, and then back to 9% in the last 2 years out. Our other funds of the district, this is just the proposed ending balance for 18-19 estimated balance for this year, and then I put in the actual ending balance for last year as a comparison. Nothing unusual there. Our education protection account, we're obligated to have this posted on our website, and then you need to approve the expenditures. This is all within our LCFF funding. It's not in addition to, it just is part of it. And we are not allowed to use it for administrator salaries, and so we always use it on certificated instructional salary and benefits every year. And that's the estimated for the end of this year, and then estimated for the end of next year as well. The local reserve cap, the SB 858 required the cap, a reserve cap for districts that is the equivalent of 2 times our reserve for economic uncertainty, which is 3%, so that would be a 6%. And then if the district wanted to have more, which everybody needs to have more, so we identify a verbiage to substantiate why we need more, which we've had our reserve discussions before. So all I did was continue what we've used each year. The governing board's responsible for maintaining the fiscal solvency of the district, and the governing board commits to maintaining a prudent level of financial resources to protect against the need to reduce services because of temporary revenue shortfalls or unpredicted expenditures. Then we're all the way to next steps, so we'll adopt the budget tomorrow. The board will, and then the state will enact their budget, and then in August I'll bring you the update on the impact of the enacted budget on what I just presented to you. In September we'll have the 17-18 actuals, and then we'll do all the calculations to determine the true up for 17-18 and present that to our bargaining team, our fiscal integrity team portion of our negotiating teams, the end of October to determine that, and then in December, first interim, and that's it.
This public hearing is closed.
I had just Two quick questions. So I know it's not a lot of money, but the Child Development Fund did end up with $26,000 in it. So that means we are covering, the money we get for the Child Development Program covers the cost. Is that correct?
Yes, I did not see any contribution to it
Okay.
estimated
And so
for
with the
next year.
COLA, that should even make us
Right, and I
safer.
believe the daily rate was increased above the COLA, so that will also be helpful.
Fabulous. And are we getting the same number of slots next year? Are we going to operate both programs at full capacity?
Yes, and the state may add, but we don't know the impact of that, and we probably won't know for a while.
Yeah. And the other question on enrollment, we used to have parents fill out a form saying whether or not they were going to leave. Has that been done, and do we have any sense of whether we're
think we
losing
do.
students? Have we tallied that up? But do we have any sense, of whether we're losing students or?
I think we're projecting that.
Pretty much the same?
Yeah.
Okay. I was just curious after the fire and stuff. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Penny.
Mm-hmm.
Items E3 through E18 are all first readings. Does anybody need to discuss any of those currently, tonight? If any thoughts come between now and the next board meeting, please send an email to the superintendent. Moving on to action item F number 1. The board has conducted a performance evaluation of Superintendent Kubin's, of our superintendent. She has received a satisfactory evaluation. Thank you for that. For anybody that may not have heard this before, a satisfactory evaluation is as high as you can receive in our evaluation process. I am very thankful that the superintendent has, she's amazing. Her transparency is, with the way she does her job, is fantastic. She's one of the kindest persons that I know, and her brilliant mind serves our district very well. So, congratulations on your satisfactory. With that satisfactory evaluation, and I think that I'm doing this correctly, I am hoping that there is a motion to ratify the contract addendum to the employment agreement for an additional 4 years to the superintendent's contract.
I so move.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? The motion carries, and thank you very much. Action item F2, also an incredible member of our team. I'm talking about Penny. I am looking for a motion to, I think I'm going to copy what I just said. Is there a motion to ratify
Sorry.
the contractual addendum to the employment agreement for an additional 4 years for our chief business official contract?
I so move. I so move.
That was a first and a second. I hope it was a correct motion. And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Penny, thank you very much. You bring a wealth of information and wonderful smiles to our team.
So happy.
Thank goodness. Two best parts of the meeting so far. Actually, Chief Dewey is pretty awesome too.
Yes.
Superintendent's report.
Super brief, it's been quite a year this year. Every person I talk to is pretty exhausted, and I'm just incredibly grateful for our staff, for all of the work that they have done, especially this year, considering what has been handed to everyone. And District Service Center staff, you're amazing. I really appreciate working with you. And to the board, thank you so much for your support this year. And you've been an incredible part of this year as well. And I, like Penny, I feel really lucky to work in this amazing school district, and grateful to the community for sending their kids to us. We love the kids, so thank you. Those statements were prompted from attending all of our promotion and graduation ceremonies, and I'm always amazed by our students and what they do. And I attended Congressman Huffman was here presenting the Congressional Art Award to one of our students, and students had an opportunity to ask him questions. And oh my gosh, I was blown away by our high school students and the depth of the questions they were asking him. So I feel really fortunate to work here. Looking forward to a little break.
Thank you. Are there any board reports? Yes, B.
Actually, it's not a report. I just want to say I love our graduations. I think all the ones that I was able to attend were just so wonderful. That's all.
Agreed, thank you. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I so move.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Item I, planning.
Remember, we have a board meeting tomorrow at 5:30. It should be very brief.
I had heard a rumor it might be moved to 5, but that's 5:30. 5:30. Okay.
What's brief?
We're hopefully just approving the LCAP and the budget tomorrow, and we've talked about that tonight. So they should be very brief.
Like half an hour or 15 minutes?
I think no more than a half an hour. Thinking 5 minutes? No.
Unless the sheriff calls tonight.
So, agenda planning?
Yeah, and then for the August 16th meeting, we'll have agenda planning on August 8th at noon.
I'm out of town.
Do we, will the changing of the guard happen by then? Oh, good, okay. I'm gonna say Zoe's gonna be there. Can anybody else do August?
I think I can.
August
I think
what?
I should be. 8, August 8th.
I'm out of town.
I should be here.
I think I can, but I can let you know tomorrow. I don't have my calendar.
So tentatively,
Carolyn?
Carolyn and Gail.
Yeah, I can do it if
Okay.
Gail cannot.
And that puts the board meeting on August the 14th?
16th.
16th.
Okay.
All right. I think that wraps it up. Meeting adjourned.
Nice job.